Chapter 5 Kingdom of Ashes. The hull scraped against the rocks with a hollow groan, jarring Mateo awake. For a moment, he thought he died at sea. The sickly sun above was pale and distant, like a lantern hung too high. The baby whimpered softly against his chest, weak and burning with fever. Mateo stood on trembling legs and peered ashore. Madeira stretched before them in shadowy silence, dotted with dim lights and smoke drifting lazily from scattered fires. It was life, yet he felt only unease. Morales approached slowly, eyes squinting as he studied the shoreline. "Madeira," he said quietly, uncertainty heavy in his voice. "Closer to Castile, but still far from home." Mateo caught the hesitation in Morales' voice. "You don't sound relieved." Morales shook his head, gazed fixed on the darkened island. "Necessity, not sanctuary. We're nearly out of everything. We have no choice but to stop here." Mateo knew better than to trust appearances. As they moved inland, the smell hit him, a heavy, sickening sweetness of decay. Bloated fish washed ashore, eyes glassy and bulging, their skin slick with black mold. Mateo knelt and cupped his hand into a pool of fresh water, tasting it cautiously, only to spit violently onto the sand. Even here, the creeping death seeped from below, contaminating everything. Days passed slowly, and Mateo's desperation grew as the crew traversed the island to find sustenance. He longed to return home, haunted constantly by the images of his mother and sister struggling alone in Castile, helpless and abandoned in the spreading darkness. Each labored breath of the weakening infant echoed his guilt, driving his heart to bitter hopelessness. The island revealed its terrors slowly, like a corpse laid bare. Vineyards, once lush, were twisted and shriveled, their grapes rotting on the vine. Villages they passed through were ghostly, gaunt survivors huddled by cold hearths, hollow-eyed and silent. An old woman, hunched against the lee of a crumbling wall, hissed at Mateo as he passed. "Beware the manor! Beware Duarte!" His name moved among the survivors like a disease. Once a merchant of the Portuguese court, Duarte had watched the governors flee, the magistrates die, and the banners fall. When the first famine hit, he gathered what was left: grain, water, arms. He built his rule not on law or love, but on the silence of empty bellies. He did not declare himself king. He did not need to. The old captain's manor squatted at the island's heart, a bloated spider hoarding its prey. A bell rang somewhere in the midst, off-key, broken by heat and corrosion, and Mateo followed it through the ruins. Below the manor's wall, he found a village without life. Men sat slumped against door frames, their ribs sharp against their skin. Mothers cradled the bones of children. The air stank of brine, rot, and quiet despair. A man with a face like old leather approached Mateo without meeting his eyes. "You seek bread?" he muttered. Mateo nodded once. The man pointed a trembling finger towards the walls. "Kneel before Duarte, or starve like a dog." Inside the courtyard, wealth still clung to the bones of the place. Piles of salted meat, barrels of fresh water, crates of spoiled fruit guarded by men with hollow eyes and iron pikes. At the center sat Duarte, swaddled in robes of damp velvet, a tarnished circlet sliding down his thinning brow. Rings slid loose on his skeletal fingers. His mouth hung open, even when he did not speak. And when he did, his voice was thick with wine and disease. "My hand feeds," he slurred. "Or my hand buries." No one cheered. His stewards, themselves half-mad with hunger and loyalty, dragged the desperate forward, offering scraps for promises, water for obedience, life for the death of dignity. Mateo bent his knee, not from submission, but from knowledge. Hunger had no pride. He took the crust they threw him and carried the child through the streets where rats no longer ran, because there was nothing left to eat. At night, he moved like smoke through the ruins, counting the blind spots in the walls, the guards who slept standing. The manor did not merely hoard food, it hoarded the last shreds of hope. At night, Mateo snuck silently into the manor to find food for the dying baby. In the manor's belly, down narrow stairwells slick with mold and old blood, Mateo found the prisoners. They lay chained to the stone, their bodies too ruined to even stand. They no longer wept. They no longer cursed. In the farthest cell, Mateo found a man who was not yet broken. A giant, hunched but not bowed, wrists shackled to the ceiling. His eyes gleamed through the gloom with a fire that sickness had not yet claimed. "Who are you?" Mateo whispered. The giant lifted his head with effort. "Baltasar," he said. His voice sounded like it had been dragged over stones. "Once a gunner of Portugal, now a ghost." He nodded to a rusting cannon barrel propped against the wall, short, battered, blackened with soot. "One shot left," Baltasar said. His mouth twisted into a grimace that might have once been a smile. "It was meant for Duarte." He leaned closer, chains rattling softly. "Help me escape," Baltasar said, "and I'll take you wherever you wish to go. You can get us off this island." Mateo stared at him in the dark. He saw not just strength, but a shared refusal to break. Mateo nodded once, wordlessly sealing their pact. Returning to his shelter, Mateo found Morales tending the baby's fevered body. Her breathing had grown so faint he could barely feel it. Mateo knelt beside her. He wrapped the baby tight against his chest, rocking her gently, whispering prayers that he no longer believed in. The baby whimpered once, a sound so small he might have imagined it. Then, her tiny chest stilled. Mateo sat frozen, willing her to breathe again, but she never moved. Slowly, he lowered her onto the blanket. The light had already gone from her face, kneeling alone in the dust. He pressed his forehead to hers and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the decision was already made. Carefully, he unfolded the priest's letter, the paper worn, but the words still legible beneath the faint moonlight. Its cryptic lines whispered promises he didn't fully understand, but which now felt heavier with purpose. He tucked it carefully away, vowing silently it would reach its intended destination. 2 nights later, Mateo crouched atop a crumbling rooftop overlooking the prison entrance. Baltasar's cell lay beneath, heavily guarded, and vulnerable to stealth. Mateo's hand tightened around his dagger, every nerve honed sharp by grief and determination. "Soon," he whispered to the dark, "we sail home."